Alright, this is a long one, so buckle up. Here we go. This archetype is a very flimsy one in terms of, well, everything. Well, it is actually was used in the anime by many various characters throughout the Duel Monsters and GX. However, their first proper introduction was in Duel Monsters by Rebecca Hopkins, and yeah, she only also used one card. This archetype actually, the called Sanctuary in the Sky archetype actually ties 5 archetypes together, those being Zera, the Agent, Arc Lord, Dark Lord, and the last one is the Parshat archetype. So yeah, many various characters throughout the shows played some monsters here and there which are part of the archetype. However, at least one card from each archetype got represented in the anime. So yeah, I guess we have that as well. But anyway, yeah, let's start off with our first card, that being the field spell, the Sanctuary in the Sky. We're starting off with a field spell because this is the card which ties all these archetypes together. Battle damage to the controller of a fairy monster from a battle involving that monster becomes 0. Yeah, this is unlike the fact that it ties most of these archetypes together. Not many decks actually run it because, well, they don't benefit that much from it. The only decks that can afford to run it, well, this is actually a 3-off staple in Cloudians because, well, they're Cloudians after all. And any other deck that runs this usually runs it because they have cards which require this thing to be on the field to work, which are most probably some of the archetypes which you tend to run pure instead of mashing all these 5 together, because that would be a technical impossibility if you choose to do it this way. But anyway, yeah, I digress. But yeah, this is a as in terms of early field spell goes, this was an okay-ish effect for the time if you were playing a fairy deck. And yeah, the Spirit Barrier was another choice you could choose to run, but it had a problem that the Spirit Barrier wasn't searchable, and due to it being a field spell, and yeah, Spirit Barrier was also a trap card, and due to this thing being a field spell, it is searchable, and yeah. Alright, next up we have 2 normal monsters, the only 2 normal monsters, that being Mystical Shine Ball, which is a level 2 light with 500 attack and defense. And yeah, we'll get to why this thing is important when we get to the other monsters. And next up we have their final normal monster, that being Warrior of Zera, which is the first card from the Zera archetype. And yeah, he is also needed for some cards in the archetype which do stuff. But yeah, let's go on to their first actual monster, that being the Agent of Mystery Earth. This is a level 2 tuner with 1000 attack and 800 defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 the Agent monster from your deck to your hand, except the Agent of Mystery Earth. While Sanctuary in the Sky is face up on the field, you can add 1 Master Hyperion from your deck to your hand instead. We'll get to that Master Hyperion way later. It's the boss monster of the Agent lineup, but anyway. Yeah, the agents, as they're called, represent each planet of the solar system minus Pluto, which is a secondary version of the legendary planets. I believe that's what the archetype is called, which was present during the GX manga. But yeah, this is a tuner monster, as we'll see later on. They have, like, I think, 3 synchro monsters, and it's their only tuner monster, so you'll be using this thing all the time in order to summon said synchro monsters, but we'll get to the synchro monsters soon. So yeah, oh, actually they have another tuner, sorry, I forgot about that one, but yeah, we'll get to everything in time. So yeah, as for this thing, well, the worst part is that it eats up your normal summon for no good reason. I would have loved it if it was normal or special summon, but I believe that might have been too powerful for the time, so it kind of works. Next up we have the Agent of Creation Venus. This is our first level 3, and you can pay 500 life points to special summon 1 Mystical Shine Ball from your hand or deck. Mind you, this isn't once per turn. So yeah, Venus is was a very handy tool in swarming options back in the day, but nowadays it's very slow. It requires you to run level 2 normal monsters, which are not very optimal in this deck unless you're, well, you can get some free link materials, but yeah. Unless you're playing like Rescue Rabbit or Unexpected Die, although I don't even think that Rescue Rabbit even works on Mystical Shine Ball. I believe it only applies to level 4 monsters. So yeah, it's a bit outdated, but still fine if you choose to run a slower variant. Next up we have the Agent of Force, Mars. This card is unaffected by any spell cards. While you control a face of the Sanctuary in the sky and your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card gains attack and defense equal to the difference between your and your opponent's life points. So basically this is a reverse elemental hero Air Neos, and as we'll see later on, the archetype doesn't focus that much on gaining life points, although there's a certain monster in the Dark Lord lineup which actually helps get this thing's effect off more efficiently, but this thing is still a frail level 3 with 0 attack, and yeah, I mean, unless you're winning, there's no point in summoning this, and yeah, you're most likely gonna be summoning this when you're going in for to kill off the limping opponent, which is okay. And the tops this card will have is around 2000 attack tops. So yeah. Next up we have the first Dark Lord monster, that being Dark Lord Ukobak. However do you read that? I'm gonna call him Ukobak. If this card is normal or special summon, you can send one Dark Lord card from your deck to the graveyard, and you can only use this effect once per turn. It's an archetypal Foolish Burial Goods, and yeah, run 3 of these at all times, and as we'll see later on, Dark Lords are actually the most numerous and the most consistent lineup in this archetype, so yeah, definitely run 3 of these at all time. Next up we have Condemned Maiden. I know it doesn't fall into any archetype by name, but lore-wise this actually falls under the archetype, much as the next monster, which we're going to get into in a minute. And during your opponent's turn, you can activate one quick play spell from your hand, and you can only use this effect once per duel. I believe this effect would be a lot more acceptable and fine if it was a once per turn effect, a hard once per turn, but as it is now, it's very underwhelming since most quick play spells are going to be phased down on the field, so yeah, this isn't worth running. Next up we have the retrained, sort of, Condemned Witch. When this card is normal summon, you can add one forbidden quick play spell from your deck to your hand. During your opponent's main phase quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon one level 4 fairy monster from your deck except Condemned Witch, and you can only use each effect of Condemned Witch once per turn. The forbidden lineup of cards is actually a lineup of spell cards which are like Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lens, Forbidden Dress, and Forbidden Scripture, which are basically way weaker spell versions of the Solemn Brigade. So yeah, the most relevant thing here is Forbidden Chalice and maybe Forbidden Dress in every 300 billion duels, but yeah. If it searched out the Solemn Brigade, I would have actually called it an amazing card and absolutely worth running, but nowadays the Forbidden lineup is rarely ever ran. Forbidden Chalice is run here and there in the occasional deck, but not too much to consider this a staple. Next up we have Dark Lord Nurse Reficule. Any effect that would make your opponent gain life points inflicts the same amount of damage to them instead. You either run 0 of these or 3 of these. The case being, you either completely ignore it because the archetype has nothing to do with this sort of effect, or you build your entire deck around the Reficule burn. This is basically a monster version of Bad Reaction to Simochi, and as we'll see later on, Dark Lords have a lot of searching options, so building a deck around this thing is insanely easy. It also turns Upstart Goblin into a Meteor of Destruction with no restrictions, so yeah, it's a very great card to consider running if you build a deck around her, that is. Sorry. Next up we have Zeradias, the Herald of Heaven. It's a level 4 with 2100 attack and 800 defense, and you can discard this card to the graveyard to add one Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck to your hand. If the aforementioned field spell isn't on the field, you destroy this card. So yeah, this among all the field searchers has the highest amount of attack, which is 2100, which is for a level 4 beyond amazing. And yeah, it has a very flimsy Earthbound Immortal Training Wheels effect where you need to have a field spell up in order to keep this guy on the field, because again, this guy comes from a time when it was very uncommon for level 4s to have such massive attack values, so yeah. I mean, it's only useful if you build your entire deck around the Sanctuary in the Sky, or if you're like playing a Cloudian, and since terraforming is limited, you run 2 or 3 copies of this in Cloudians, because, well, terraforming is limited and Metaverse can be a bit too slow in Cloudians, so yeah. Next up we have the Agent of Miracles Jupiter. Once per turn you can remove from play one the Agent monster in your graveyard to select one face-up light fairy type monster you control. The selected monster gains 800 attack until the end phase. While the Sanctuary in the Sky is face-up on the field, once per turn you can discard one fairy type monster to select one of your removed from play light fairy type monster and special summon it. It's fine, it's nothing too amazing. It's so far the base Agent monster because from the graveyard you can banish it for a okay attack boost, and if you have the Sanctuary in the Sky, you can set up the graveyard for more plays and then special summon the monster you banished by this effect. So yeah, 2 or 3 of these in Agent decks is usually fine. Sorry once again. And next up we have the Agent of Wisdom Mercury. During your standby phase, if you control this face-up card and no cards in your hand at the end of the opponent's last end phase, draw 1 card. Yes, this might be one of the most specific draw 1 effects I've ever seen, and yeah, due to the fact that it has 0 attack and, well, tolerable defense, it makes it very, very bricky to run, and yeah, it would have been a decent addition to the archetype if you like. For example, if it was normal or special summon and you like control no cards, then it allows you to draw 1 card. It would still be awful, but it would be a much more playable than what we have right now. It's a gimmick card if I ever saw one. Next up we have Radiant Gerald. Well, this card is sent to the graveyard except if it was destroyed by a battle. Gain 1000 life points if the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field. Yeah, it's I mean, it's the only archetypal way to help out the Agent of Force Mars in a way. It has 2000 defense, which is pretty tolerable for a monster which came around its time period. For some reason, the effect doesn't trigger when this thing is destroyed by battle. God knows why. But yeah, it's okay. Well, below average because yeah, nobody's gonna waste their deck space on this thing. It doesn't even have any additional effects and anything. Next up we have the Forgiving Maiden, another one of those monsters which you seem it's not like a part of the archetype, but it is actually. It has 850 attack and 2000 defense, and you contribute this face-up card to return to your hand one of your monsters destroyed as a battle during this turn. The only part of this card which connects it to the archetype is that one of their monsters requires it as a fusion material. And not to mention, this card's effect is extremely slow and underwhelming, so yeah, you don't run this. Next up we have Hecatrice. You can discard this card to the graveyard to add 1 Valhalla Hall of the Fallen from your deck to your hand. Okay, so what does this Valhalla do? Well, once per turn you can special summon 1 fairy monster from your hand. You must control no monsters to activate and resolve this effect. Fairy decks go way back, and this card also goes way back, as it was ran at 3 in basically any fairy deck, and it's still vitally rare even today, because, well, it's one of the best play starters the archetype can make, or basically any fairy deck can make, so yeah. I've even seen some few decks of Trickstars that even run this, because they highly benefit from special summoning the monsters, so yeah, it's a great card. And Hecatrice is also ran at 3 because it's a level 4 fairy. You can discard it to search this thing out, so yeah, great card. Next up we have their final level 4, that being Nova Summoner. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 light fairy type monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. If the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can special summon 1 Air Knight Parshat instead. Okay, so this is basically a type searcher for fairies, which was not very uncommon to see back in the day, because we had plenty of type and attribute searches back in the day. And it does the job very well, and yeah, it's basically ran at basically any deck. In slower formats it was usually a 3-off staple, and nowadays it can also provide some neat consistency boosting to a lot of decks. And now, how about that last effect? Air Knight Parshat, it's specifically mentioned because it's actually their first tribute monster. and he has more attack than the required amount of attack Nova Summoner had. Anyway, this is a level 5 with 1900 attack and 1400 defense, and if this card is an attacks a defense position monster, it can inflict piercing damage, and if this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you draw 1 card. So back in the day, this was a pretty kick-ass tribute monster, so no question about it, due to him being a very decent beater which can inflict piercing damage, and bumped up with several equips, you can be a genuine threat, also while giving you some nice pluses. However, nowadays that plays a bit too slow to matter, so yeah, unless you're building a slower variant, there's no reason to go back to this guy. Next up we have its dark counterpart, that being Dark Knight Parshat. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish 1 dark monster from your graveyard to draw 1 card. This card gains 100 attack for each dark monster in your graveyard. Yeah, as we'll see, Dark Lords are filled with dark monsters, and not a lot of them benefit from being banished, so you would love them to have them in your graveyard all the time so you can revive them, in which the archetype is focused on. So yeah, basically a different flavor of Parshat, a worse one in my opinion, and the 100 attack for each dark monster in your graveyard is the cherry on top, which it even decreases upon banishing stuff from the graveyard. Masterpiece, I tell you. Next up we have Dark Lord Marie. Once per turn during your standby phase, gain 200 life points. This card must be in the graveyard to activate and resolve this effect. Or you can be not a complete idiot and just run a Hummingbird instead, which is a bit better. It's not a goddamn tribute monster with terrible stats, and yeah, unless you use this thing for a fusion material with future fusion or something like that, there's no reason to care about this. Next up we have Dark Lord Edit Array. I hope I didn't butcher that name here. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, it gains this effect. If this card attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing damage. Yeah, it's a perfectly passable effect for the time, but the problem here is that nowadays he doesn't do anything else. And now, yeah, we see the primary gimmick of Dark Lord starting to arise. Their effects trigger when they are special summoned from the graveyard, so yeah. And as we'll see later on, some of their best monsters share this effect, and they're very powerful, so yeah. Next up we have the Agent of Entropy Uranus. This is a level 5 tuner monster, and if the Sanctuary of the Sky is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn you can send the agent monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, this card's level becomes the level of the monster sent to the graveyard by this effect. A version of the archetype pulls Axel Synchron, and yeah, it's a nice card. Although I would have loved it if it would allow you to send any fairy type monster to the graveyard, since Dark Lords highly benefit from being in the graveyards. And the agents, well, you can help out set the Jupiter's effect, and you can set up the stage for their boss monster, which was mentioned earlier. But yeah, it's an okay card, and yeah, it's just that. It's an okay card. Next up we have the Agent of Judgment, Saturn. This is a level 6 with 2400 attack and 0 defense. And while your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can tribute this card to inflict damage to your opponent equal to the difference. And if you do not control face up the Sanctuary in the Sky, this effect is not applied. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. So yeah, this is actually a okay card. Again, it's a tribute monster. I would have loved it if it was a bit easier to bring out, but yeah, if for some reason this can be a very nice game ender, but it requires a bit too much setup in order to work. For example, if you have 4000 life points and the opponent has 2000, well, the opponent will take 2000 damage, so this is basically a game ender. And yeah, I would have loved it if it was a bit easier to set up, and not to mention that you need to control a specific field spell in order to activate this effect. So yeah, this is the type of card you usually build your entire deck around, so yeah. Next up we have Dark Lord Amdusk. This is another level 6 with 1800 attack and 2800 defense, which is for level 6 beyond amazing. You can discard this card in one Dark Lord card, then target one Dark Lord card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. During either player's turn, you can pay 1000 life points, then target one Dark Lord spell or trap in your graveyard, apply the target's effect, then shuffle that target into the deck. You can only use each effect once per turn, and you can only special summon Dark Lord Asmodeus once per turn. Amdusk, sorry. Yeah, this is one of their more recent support cards, and it shows. It's a very unique way to recycle your Dark Lord back row, along with getting their effects off upon doing so. And yeah, it also recycles monsters in a very unique way. However, I would have loved it if it had an effect which activates when it is special summoned from the graveyard. I think that would have made the discard an even better choice in Dark Lords. So yeah. Next up we have Dark Lord Gnoston. This is a level 7, our first one. And you can discard 2 other Dark Lord cards, special summon this card from your hand. Quick effect, you can pay 1000 life points, then target 1 Dark Lord spell or trap in your graveyard, apply that target's effect, then shuffle the target into the deck. You can only use this effect once per turn, and you can only special summon this guy once per turn this way. It basically has the exact same summoning, has the exact same effect as Amdusk, but the summoning condition is a bit too costly sometimes, because if it allowed you to tribute 1 Dark Lord monster or any 2 cards, then I would have called it a bit better, but as it is now, it's a level 7, so rank 7 plays are a bit more available to you by that. And yeah, if you crave a level 7, then Pancratops is a better option in my opinion in terms of special summonable beaters. Next up we have Neo Parshat the Sky Paladin, another level 7, and you can special summon this card from your hand by tributing 1 Air Knight Parshat. If this card inflicts attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. If this card inflicts battle damage, draw 1 card. And while the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field and your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card gains attack and defense equal to the difference in life points. Yeah, another one of those cards that requires you to basically build your entire deck around. Basically a straight upgrade over Parshat, with the field spell being an additional bonus if you control it. So yeah. Also, it's a level 7, rank 7 plays, I already said that, so yeah. Again, run by preference if you're building a deck around this. Their first level 8 is Archlord Zerato, the final archetype that needed to be introduced. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card cannot be special summoned except by tributing 1 face-up Warrior of Zera on your side of the field while Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field. If the Sanctuary in the Sky is not on your side of the field, is by discarding 1 light monster card from your hand to the graveyard, destroy all monsters on your opponent's side of the field, and if the Sanctuary in the Sky is not on the field, this effect is not applied. Yeah, it's a boss monster that requires a specific level 4 normal monster to be present in order to be brought out. And yeah, it has a discarding effect which benefits by discarding Dark Lords to the graveyard, so you can have a graveyard setup ready if you play a morph. However, in terms of Arc Lords, yeah, there are only 2 Arc Lords. This is very not worth running because, well, the only good thing it's good for is trading bait. But it's entirely outclassed by the final Arc Lord monster, that being Arc Lord Christia. It's another level 8, and if you have exactly 4 fairy type monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, target 1 fairy monster in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. Neither player can special summon monsters. If this card, face-up card, would be sent from the field to the graveyard, place it on the top of your deck instead. So yeah, this is a very this is a very incredible lockdown card, as in it's a Vanity's Emptiness and Monster form, and not to mention you can run 3 of these, and combined with Valhalla, you get a pretty fantastic beat stick. You get a level 8. And you also restrict every player from special summoning. So, yeah, it's basically a boss monster for massive amounts of fairy type decks. So, yeah, run any number of these. Next up, we have Dark Lord Zerato. If you have 4 or more dark monsters with different names in your graveyard, you can summon this card by tributing 1 dark monster. You can send 1 dark monster from your hand to the graveyard, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card was if this effect was activated this turn, destroy this card. Yeah, how can you make a card that's even worse than the monster it's based on? Yeah, the first Arc Lord Zerato was terrible, but this one is even worse. I mean, why? Why did you do that? No, don't run this. No. Next up we have Dark Lord Asmodeus. Another level 8 with 3000 attack and 2500 defense. Cannot be special summoned from the deck or graveyard. Once per turn you can send one fairy type monster from your deck to the graveyard. If this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon one Osmo token, fairy type dark level 5 and attack 1800 and defense 1300, and Deus token, fairy type dark level 3, 1200 attack, 1200 defense, and Osmo token cannot be destroyed by card effects, and Deus token cannot be destroyed by battle. This is actually a very unique token spawner, since it actually gives pretty unique buff effects to the tokens it summons. Not to mention that it also acts as an archetype of Foolish Burial, another one in that case. And yeah, the only way you're special summoning this is via Valhalla, and that's the only way you'll be summoning it, because, well, you won't be tribute summoning this. It's a bit of a bummer that you cannot special summon it from the graveyard, because that's kind of what the Dark Lords do. So yeah, it's a fun little card and definitely worth your time. Next up we have Dark Lord Superbia. When this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target one fairy type monster in your graveyard except Dark Lord Superbia, special summon that target. Play extender, trade and target. Basically use trade and to set this thing into the graveyard and set up your plays. Simple and easy, run 3 of these, and yeah, what else can I say? Next up we have the final agent monster, that being the boss monster Master Hyperion. You can special summon this card by banishing the agent monster from your hand, field, or graveyard. Once per turn you can banish one light fairy type monster in your graveyard and target one card on the field and destroy that target, and while the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can activate this effect up to twice per turn. It's a special summonable level 8 beat stick with which can get rid of 2 cards if the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, and yeah. In agents, this is a very nice boss monster, and is always ran at 3 in the agent build, since it's also a trade and target and all that. Next up we have Sacred Arc Air Knight Parshat, the final Parshat monster. If you activate a counter trap card, or if you negate the activation of a spell or trap card or monster effect except during the damage step, you can banish 2 other fairy type monsters from your hand, field, and or graveyard. Special summon this card from your graveyard, if it was there when you activate this effect, or hand even if not. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage, and when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can add 1 Parshat card or 1 counter trap from your deck to your hand. The only relevant usage of this thing, again, is the fact that this thing can freaking search out counter traps, which is, well, the entirety of the Solemn Brigade. So yeah, but the problem here is that he is a bit too difficult to summon a bit, because, well, you specifically need to activate a counter trap or negate the activation or something, which sometimes it's not that hard to do, but sometimes you, well, don't have the appropriate resources to do so, so yeah. Alright, now let's go on to the final batch of Dark Lords. First up we have Dark Lord Testicles, whatever. This is another level 9, just like the Sacred Arc Parshat. And if a Dark Lord monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can discard this card instead. During either player's turn, you can pay 1000 life points and target one Dark Lord spell or trap in your graveyard, apply that target's effect, then shuffle the target into the deck. You can only use this effect once per turn, you can only special summon this guy once per turn. This card actually has a very fun protection effect, because he basically sets up the graveyard while doing so. Also, he has that very handy back row recycling, and yeah, it's a great card, and definitely worth your time. Next up we have Dark Lord Desire. This is their first level 10 monster, and this one cannot be special summoned at all. You can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 fairy type monster, and once per turn you can target 1 monster your opponent controls. This card loses exactly 1000 attack, and if it does, send that target to the graveyard. This is again a very solid removal option, and it's a bit of a bummer that you cannot special summon this. However, that is circumvented by that you can use 1 tribute instead of 2 in order to bring this thing out. And yeah, the removal is very solid since it doesn't destroy, because, well, dodging floating effects is very nice. Now yeah, this is definitely a nice card to consider having around. Next up we have Dark Lord Ishiel. I hope I did pronounce that right as well. And you can discard this card and 1 Dark Lord card, draw 2 cards. Quick effect, you can pay 1000 life points and target 1 Dark Lord spell or trap in your graveyard, apply that target's effect, then shuffle that target into the deck. You can only use this effect once per turn, and you can only special summon this girl once per turn. And yeah, this is also a 3-off staple because it offers draw power, and draw power is always appreciated. Basically, if you discard this and a Dark Lord monster, which is most likely gonna be something like Superbia or something that benefits again from being in the graveyard. So yeah, you get 2 cards, and yeah, it's a great card, no question about it. Then the final Dark Lord monster is Dark Lord Morningstar. This is a level 11, which cannot be special summoned at all. 3000 attack and defense it has. And if this card is tribute summoned, you can special summon Dark Lord monsters from your hand and or deck up to the number of effect monsters your opponent controls. While you control another Dark Lord monster, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. Once per turn, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of Dark Lord monsters on the field, and if you do, gain 500 life points for each Dark Lord card sent to the graveyard by this effect. Yeah, it's basically a very inconsistent monster. It's also a level 11, which is the worst level in the game, so yeah, this is a type of card you basically run by preference and not more than one. The final monster is Zera the Ment, which is a ritual monster from the Zera lineup of cards, which has no additional effects and can be summoned with Zera Ritual, which is a ritual card which again offers no other benefits. Alright, then now on to their extra deck monsters. First up we have Saint Joan, which requires a Forgiving Maid, and then Marie the Fallen One, or Dark Lord Marie as she's now called, as fusion materials, and yeah, it's not worth running. And now we finally get to the good bunch of cards. We have 2 Synchro monsters and 2 Link monsters to cap things off. First up we have Angel of Zera. This is a level 8 with 2800 attack and 2300 defense. Completely generic, and this card gains 100 attack for each of your opponent's banished cards. During the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished, special summon this banished card, and you can only use this effect once per turn. We've seen throughout the course of this review that the archetype is not focused on banishing stuff at all, which means the first effect is kind of pointless. However, the first effect would be tolerable if you could actually tribute this thing in order to summon Master Hyperion and then get this thing back to free up your extra monster zone. But it's a Zera monster and not a agent monster, so yeah, run by preference in my opinion. And their final monster, their final Synchro monster, is Avenging Knight Parshat. Another level 8. This one requires 1 tuner, 1 or more non-tuner light monsters. Has 2600 attack, and once per turn you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, change the target's battle position, and the other part of the effect is that it inflicts piercing damage. Yeah, you only use this effect to be able to inflict piercing damage, and you don't even draw a card for this. So, generic beater, almost generic materials, and it's basically played as a generic fairy boss monster, which most decks don't even run, so no. Next up we have their first Link monster, that being Condemned Dark Lord. This is a Link 2, requires 2 fairy monsters, points bottom left and bottom right, 1600 attack, and you contribute the summon fairy monsters that requires 2 tributes by banishing 2 monsters from your graveyard instead of tributing. It is still treated as a tribute summon. Once per turn you can discard 1 card, take 1 Dark Lord card from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Condemned Dark Lord once per turn. During each end phase, gain 500 life points for each fairy monster you control. The last part of the effect is completely pointless, but all the other effects of the card are pretty well integrated, and makes this one of the best support cards ever to be existent from the Reigns era. Basically allows you to tribute to summon your monsters by banishing some other monsters from your graveyard, which works well in conjunction with the agents or some other cards which we mentioned so far. Also, you can you set some graveyard setup by discarding a card and taking a Dark Lord card, or either adding it to your hand or performing a Foolish Burial Goods. So yeah, this is a 3-off staple in every Dark Lord build. And the last monster, absolute last monster, is the Celestial Knight Lord Parshat. A Link 3, points bottom left, down, and bottom right, and requires 2+ fairy monsters, 2400 attack, and you can discard 1 card, add 1 the Sanctuary in the Sky, or 1 card that specifically lists the card the Sanctuary in the Sky and its text from your deck to your hand. If the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can add 1 fairy monster instead. If a face-up fairy monster you control is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can banish one fairy monster from your graveyard to special summon one fairy monster with a higher level than the banished monster from your hand. You can only use this effect of the Celestial Knight Parshat once per turn. It's a searcher which does its job well. It's a field searcher since, well, that is highly appreciated since terraforming is limited. And if you already happen to have a field spell, you can also add any fairy type monster from your deck to your hand, which is lovely. It's also on a very easy link for 3 to summon. Has great arrows, and yeah, you definitely worth running in this deck. So yeah. Next up we have Banishment of the Dark Lords, their first spell card. Add one Dark Lord card from your deck to your hand, except Banishment of the Dark Lords, and you can only activate this once per turn. Literally run 3 of these. I don't have to explain this any further, even though it has a hard once per turn for some reason. It's a search card, and yeah, it's always appreciated to be run at 3. Dark Lord Contact is their next card, and it allows you to special summon a Dark Lord monster from your graveyard in defense position, and you can only use this once per turn. It triggers the Dark Lord's effects when summoned from the graveyard. I don't like it for a reason that it special summons in defense position for some reason. But hey, it's a revival card, it's an archetypal monster reborn, so yeah, it's also a 3-off staple. Next up we have the Sanctum of Parshat, their final spell card. Continuous one, and this card's name becomes the Sanctuary in the Sky while on the field or in the graveyard. Fairy monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense. Set spells or traps cannot be targeted by or destroyed by card effects. Once per turn you can target a total of 3 fairy monsters and or counter traps with different names in your graveyard. Place them on top of the deck in any order. I would have loved to, I would have appreciated more if it like shuffled them into the deck and allowed you to draw like 1 or 2 cards, but as it is now, it's basically a secondary version of the Sanctuary in the Sky, which you don't tend to run. Goodbye. Next up we have Rebirth of Parshat, a counter trap. When a spell trap or a monster effect is activated, reveal 1 counter trap in your hand, then discard 1 card and pay 1000 life points, negate the activation, and if you do, shuffle that card into the deck. Then you can special summon 1 Parshat monster from your deck or extra deck. It's a counter trap that has a very specific activation condition, and as in return it allows you to summon a Parshat monster from the deck or extra deck, which is appreciated but not worth the sentiments, because Parshat extra deck monsters other than the Link monsters are very rarely ran, if ever, so yeah, that is kind of redundant. Next up we have Dark Lord Descent. Pay half your life points. Special summon up to 2 Dark Lord monsters from your graveyard in defense position with the same level as 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. If it wasn't for this level gimmick, I would have considered this a 3-off staple, because it's somewhat of an upgrade over the Dark Lord Contact, but as it is now, it's a questionable 1 or 2-off. Next up we have Dark Lord Enchantment. Send 1 Dark Lord monster from your hand or face up from the field to the graveyard. Take control of 1 face up monster your opponent controls until the end phase. You can only activate 1 Dark Lord Enchantment per turn. Or you can do just none of that and just run Brain Control or, well, freaking Mind Control. How handy. Next up we have Dark Lord Rebellion. Send 1 Dark Lord monster from your hand or face up from the field to the graveyard to destroy 1 card on the field. You can only use this effect once per turn. Yeah, you're mostly going to be discarding Dark Lords in order to activate this effect, but I would have loved it much more if this was a quick play and a kind of Twin Twister kind of a quick play. In fact, running Twin Twister is a lot more consistent and versatile than running this thing. And next up we have the Sanctified Dark Lord. Then 1 Dark Lord monster from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard. Negate the effects of 1 effect monster on the field until the end of this turn, and if you do, gain life points equal to its attack. You can only activate 1 of these per turn. Negating any 1 card used to be, well, it still is one of the most valued effects. That's why Guard Dragons still run Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss in their extra decks, despite not running any tuner monsters. And yeah, it's a very strong kind of effect. However, it's a bit too slow since it's a trap card and you can only activate 1 of these. So yeah, it's basically a 1 or 2 off in that sense. Witch's Strike is their next card, and if your opponent negates the normal or special summon of a monster, the activation of a card effect, destroy all cards your opponent controls and in their hand. So yeah, this is actually a pretty strong disabling effect and basically a very strong punishment for the opponent for using the Solemn Brigade, just like it's depicted in the artwork. Basically, if your opponent negates literally anything, he loses your entire hand and field. So yeah, it's a very fun card to pull off. However, it isn't searchable, so watch out for the ratios. Next up we have Light of Judgment. If the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can discard one light monster to your graveyard to apply one of the following effects. Look at your opponent's hand and discard one card from their hand, or send one card from your opponent controls to the graveyard. Usually you're going to be using the second effect a lot more since, well the first one is a confiscation type of effect, which is still pretty good. You're most likely going to be giving them free graveyard setup with this, since, well, your opponent is praying for stuff in their hand or deck to hit the graveyard so they can revive it onto the field. So yeah, you're most likely going to be using the second effect to get rid of huge beaters or any problem card which you might be facing. And the final card is the Counter Trap Divine Punishment. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated while the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. It's an archetypal Omni-Negate, which is decent, but the problem is that it requires the Sanctuary in the Sky to be present on the field, which makes it worth running at 1 or 2 max, so yeah. Okay, so time for the grading scale. I mean, lots of these decks are meant to function on their own, but technically they're part of the same archetype. Dark Lords are the most numerous and the most consistent bunch of the cards. Agents have a clear win condition and playstyle, despite not having any of the archetypal synchro monsters, despite having 2 tuners in their arsenal. Zera archetype is completely horrible and not worth running. The only purpose of that archetype is getting access to the field spell or searching out or getting access to Archlord Zerato. Parshat used to be good, but it's horribly outdated. The only relevant monster there is their Link monster, so yeah. And it's so, as an overall grade, I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 3 in terms of consistency. Power, they do have lots of various beat sticks, which also have a very powerful effect. And again, most of these decks are mostly meant to be functioning by themselves, and the extra deck monsters are hardly ever in because, well, except the Link monsters, the Dark Lord Link monster, the Parshat Link monster, and occasionally the Zera Angel, and yeah. That's about as far as it goes. And in terms of main deck, yeah, Archlord Christia is an absolutely ridiculous card, and some of their other cards help out with bringing her out. So power output is also a generous 2 out of 3. In terms of comeback ability, well, only Dark Lords have any consistent comeback abilities built into them because, well, they're the most consistent and the most numerous of the bunch. So yeah, collectively it's a 1 out of 3, while Dark Lords is somewhere between a 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3. No, let's make it 2 out of 3 for Dark Lords, and overall a 1 out of 3. Protection also is a collectively 1 out of 3 because, well, Dark Lords have some ounces of protection, while the other monsters don't have protection at all. So yeah, collectively it's a 1 out of 3. However, in the versatility, well, it obviously gets a 3 out of 3 because this is an archetype consisting of 5 sub-archetypes, and yeah, feel free to experiment with it however you like because, well, the Dark Lords are actually the most numerous and consistent ones of the bunch, and while the other ones are to give you some chuckles and fun during in casual variants, and yeah, competitively they're also very good in terms of keeping up their playstyle and presence, so it's perfectly fine. Oh boy, this I think was the longest archetype I've ever reviewed. Or was it Synchro Psychic, or no, Dark Magician actually might be the longest archetype I reviewed. Who knows? I have to check back. But anyway, yes, this was the last archetype analysis I was gonna do. I'm taking a very, very long break because I've been doing this series for months now. Ever since I finished the Kill a Kill Let's Play and the Meteor 60 Seconds Let's Play. Since then, that's a long time, man. Yeah, it's certainly Certainly a long time. What else can I say? Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos, videos and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe. And next up, I have 3 top 10 lists, and then after that, an update video. See you all. Have a good day, and peace.